There is a slab of pork belly hanging in my spring house right now. No refrigerator, no freezer, no salt cure, no smoke. It has been hanging there for 14 months, and last Sunday I cut a piece off, fried it in a cast iron pan, and fed it to my wife and my 3 youngest children for breakfast. Nobody got sick. Nobody made a face. The meat was sweet and clean and tasted the way pork is supposed to taste, before it ever meets a plastic wrapper. Now here is the number I want you to sit with. A chest freezer costs about $600. The electricity to run it costs about $180 a year. Over 10 years, that is roughly $2,400 just to keep meat cold. My method cost me $9. $9. Not 90. Not 900. $9 for the whole setup. And it will last me the rest of my life and probably my son's life after that. My name is Elias Yoder. I am Amish. I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I raise hogs, I raise beef, I raise chickens, and I've kept meat without electricity for over 40 years the way my father kept it, and the way his father kept it before him. Now, a fellow on the internet who calls himself Project Farm ran a test, and folks have been sending me clips of it and asking me if it is real. He claims meat can be preserved for 2 years without a fridge, without salt, without smoke. And I'm going to tell you right now, before we go one step further, that the method is real. It works. It has worked for 400 years. But I am also going to tell you the part that should make you uneasy, because there is a reason you have never heard of it, and there is a reason the meat industry would prefer you never learn it. Stay with me. Let me start with why your meat rots, because you cannot fix a problem you do not understand. Meat spoils for 3 reasons, and only 3 reasons: bacteria, oxygen, moisture. That is it. That is the whole of it. Bacteria need 3 things to multiply on the surface of your pork chop. They need water, they need warmth, they need air. If you take away any one of those 3, the bacteria stop growing. If you take away 2 of them, the meat becomes shelf-stable. If you take away all 3, the meat will outlive you. The English want to solve this with a machine that keeps everything at 38 degrees. They plug it into the wall. They pay the electric company every month, forever, without ever stopping to ask if there is another way. And when the power goes out for 4 days, they lose $400 worth of food and stand in the driveway watching it drip onto the concrete. I have watched my neighbors do this twice. My grandfather never lost a pound of meat to a power outage because my grandfather never had power. He had a spring house, and he had a crock, and he had a substance that costs almost nothing and has been used to preserve food since at least the year 1600. That substance is rendered animal fat, lard, tallow, suet. The old country French called this method confit. The Germans called it Schmalzfleisch. The English who came to Pennsylvania called it potted meat. And every farmhouse in this county had a crock of it in the cellar until about 1955, when the deep freezer salesman came through and told everybody the old way was dirty. It was not dirty. It was better. Here is why it works, and I want you to understand this because it is the whole key. Fat is hydrophobic. That means water cannot pass through it. Fat is also, when it is solid and sealed properly, an almost perfect barrier against oxygen. So when you cook a piece of meat slowly in fat until every drop of water has been driven out of it, and then you submerge that cooked meat in more fat, and you let the fat harden around it in a cool place, you have taken away all 3 of the things bacteria need. No water, no oxygen, and in a spring house or a root cellar, not enough warmth to matter. The meat inside that crock is in a state of suspension. It is not alive. It is not dead in the way rotten meat is dead. It is preserved. The same way a bug in amber is preserved, except you can eat it. Now let me tell you exactly what you need and exactly what it costs, because I know somebody is going to say, this only works if you are Amish and live on a farm. That is not true. You can do this in an apartment in Pittsburgh if you have a cool closet or a basement corner that stays below 60 degrees. You need a stoneware crock or a wide-mouth glass jar with a heavy lid. A 1-gallon crock at the hardware store in Gordonville costs $22. You can find them at estate sales for $4. You need meat. Pork works best because pork renders its own fat. A pork shoulder from a local farmer costs about $3.50 a pound. You need extra fat. Leaf lard from the same farmer, or beef tallow, or duck fat if you have ducks, about 2 pounds of fat for every 3 pounds of meat. You need salt, and I know I said no salt cure, and I mean it. You are not curing the meat with salt the way bacon is cured. You are using about 1 tablespoon per pound just to season, the same as you would if you were cooking supper. You need a cool place. Below 60 degrees is good. Below 50 degrees is better. A root cellar, a spring house, an unheated basement, a north-facing closet in an old stone house. That is the whole list. Crock, meat, fat, a pinch of salt, a cool corner. $9 if you already have a crock, $22 if you do not. Here is how you do it. Cut your pork shoulder into pieces about the size of your fist. Season each piece with salt and pepper, and if you like, a bay leaf or a sprig of thyme from the garden. Place the pieces in a heavy pot. Cast iron is best, but any thick bottom pot will do, and cover them completely with the rendered fat. The fat must be liquid and warm, not hot. Set the pot on the back of the stove or in the oven at 200 degrees. Not 350 degrees. Not 300 degrees. 200 degrees, and you leave it there for 4 hours, maybe 5. You are not frying the meat. You are not searing the meat. You are gently, patiently driving every molecule of water out of the fibers and letting the fat move into the space the water left behind. You will know it is done when you can push a fork into a piece of meat and it falls apart with no resistance at all. There will be no pink. There will be no juice. When you press on the meat, no liquid comes out. That is what dry meat looks like, and dry meat does not rot. Now here's the trick most folks get wrong. When you transfer the meat into your crock, you must pack it tight. No air pockets. Then you pour the hot fat over it, filling every crevice, and you keep pouring until there is at least 1 inch of pure fat covering the top of the meat. 1 full inch. Not half an inch, not 3/4. 1 inch, so that when the fat cools and shrinks, there is still a solid seal. Then you let it cool at room temperature for a few hours until the fat begins to firm. Then you move it to the cool place, and you leave it alone. You do not open it. You do not check on it. You do not stick your finger in it. Every time you break the fat seal, you introduce air, and air is the enemy. Now, I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters. I have to be honest with you, and honest is better than impressive. I am not going to tell you this method is perfect. I am not going to tell you it will work in a hot climate with no cool storage. I am not going to tell you every single crock will make it 2 years. I have lost maybe 1 crock out of every 20 over the years, usually because I did not render the fat clean enough, or because a mouse got into the spring house and pushed the lid loose, or because I got greedy and did not use enough fat on top. You have to inspect the crock before you eat from it. If the fat on top has turned yellow-brown and smells sour like old cheese, throw the whole thing to the pigs. If you see any green or blue or black on the surface of the fat, throw it out. If it smells like anything other than clean rendered fat and cooked pork, throw it out. Your nose knows. Trust your nose. The people who lived this way for 300 years did not have laboratories. They had noses, and they lived to be 80. And I will tell you something else. This method works best with pork and duck and goose. It works pretty well with beef. It does not work well with chicken because chicken does not have enough fat of its own, and the texture goes strange. It does not work at all with fish. Do not try it with fish. I owe you those honest words. Now, here is the question I want you to ask. If this method has been known for 400 years, if my grandmother did it every autumn, if every farmhouse in Lancaster County had a crock of potted pork in the cellar until my parents' generation, why did it disappear? Why did your grandmother probably not teach it to your mother? Why is it not in the cookbooks at the grocery store? I will tell you why. In 1913, a company called Kelvinator sold the first electric home refrigerator. In 1927, General Electric began mass-producing them. By 1944, 85% of American homes had one. The appliance industry spent, and I am not making this number up, over $50 million in the 1930s and 1940s on advertising to convince American housewives that the old ways of preserving food were dirty, dangerous, and beneath a modern woman. They ran ads in every magazine showing a smiling wife in a clean white kitchen next to her new refrigerator, and next to her, in shadow, an old woman with a stoneware crock, looking backward and ashamed. That is not an accident. That is a campaign. And it worked. It worked so well that 3 generations later, an Amish man on the internet has to explain to English folks that their great-grandmothers were not idiots, that the food their great-grandparents ate did not poison them, that there was, and still is, a way to keep meat for 2 years without paying the electric company 1 penny. Now ask yourself who profits when you believe the only safe way to store meat is in a machine that costs $600, uses $180 of electricity a year, breaks after 12 years, and gets thrown into a landfill. The appliance manufacturer profits, the utility company profits, the landfill contractor profits, the repairman profits, the extended warranty company profits. Every single link in that chain profits from your dependence on their machine. And every single one of them would lose money the day you learned to keep meat in a crock of fat in your basement. None of this is a secret. It has been written down in cookbooks for 200 years. Escoffier wrote about it in 1903. Julia Child wrote about it in 1961. You were just never told, because there was no advertising budget behind the crock. My grandfather, whose name was Amos Yoder, and who died in 1987 at the age of 91, kept a crock of potted pork on the north wall of his cellar every year of his adult life. When my grandmother would send me down to fetch supper, I would lift the wooden lid, break through the pale ivory layer of hardened lard with a butter knife, and pull out a piece of pork that had been sitting there since October. It was February. That pork had been in the cellar for 4 months. It tasted like the day it was cooked. I never got sick. My father never got sick. My uncle, who ate the same crock, never got sick. The bishop, who came for Sunday dinner, never got sick. My grandfather used to say, and I remember this because he said it more than once, that a man who cannot feed his family without the electric company is a man who does not really own his food. He owns a receipt. The food belongs to whoever can shut off the power. Sit with that. A man who cannot feed his family without the electric company owns a receipt, not food. So here is what I want you to do this weekend. I am not going to ask you to preserve 20 pounds of pork on your first try. I want you to start small. Go to a farmer, not a grocery store, and buy 3 pounds of pork shoulder and 2 pounds of leaf lard. That should cost you about $18. Find a heavy pot. Cook it slow at 200 degrees for 4 hours. Pack it in a clean glass jar. Cover it with an inch of the melted fat. Put it in the coolest place in your house. The back of a basement closet works. A garage in November works. A shelf in an unheated pantry works. Then, and this is the hard part, leave it alone for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, open it, smell it, cut it with a knife and warm a small piece in a pan. Taste it, and I promise you, you will taste something your great-grandmother knew and your grandmother forgot and your mother was told to be afraid of. You will taste independence. Then, once you know it works, do a bigger crock in October when the weather cools. That crock will feed your family in January and February and March, and you will not have paid the electric company 1 cent to keep it. Tell me in the comments below whether you have ever heard of potted meat, whether your grandparents did anything like this, or what part of the country you are in, because I am curious how much of this knowledge is still alive in pockets and how much has been forgotten. I read every single one. Next time, I'm going to show you how to render leaf lard in your own kitchen using nothing but a heavy pot and a wooden spoon, and how to make it so clean and white and pure that it will keep on a pantry shelf for 2 years without ever going rancid. Because the fat you buy at the grocery store will not work for this method. You have to render your own, and I will walk you through it step by step, the way my mother taught me when I was 8 years old, standing on a wooden crate to reach the stove. Until then, remember the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember. If this helped you, hit the like button, share it with somebody who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you do not miss the rendering video next week. God bless, and I will see you then.